Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the frustrating, exhausting, and honestly surprisingly fascinating psychology behind that 2 a.m. monster under the bed. Listen, if you're a caregiver, you probably know this scenario way too well. You're fast asleep, the house is perfectly quiet, and then out of nowhere, you hear terrified cries coming from down the hall. Well, we're going to unpack exactly what is happening in a child's brain during those moments, and more importantly, we'll discover how to actually handle them using real developmental psychology.
So why doesn't logic work at 2 a.m.? Seriously, think about it. You walk into your kid's room, you flip on the main overhead light, and you calmly, rationally explain that monsters simply do not exist. You hit them with cold, hard adult logic. You might even explain the literal physics of the closet door, and yet your child is still completely terrified, clinging to your leg and absolutely unconvinced by your impeccable rational arguments. It is incredibly frustrating, isn't it? But as it turns out, trying to use logic on a terrified child in the middle of the night completely fails for a very specific, scientifically documented reason.
Section 1. Blurring fantasy and reality. Let's look at what happens when those boundaries blur.
Interestingly enough, it all comes down to this fascinating developmental stage called the immature fantasy-reality distinction. Basically, this means that while a child totally knows the difference between real and pretend when they're perfectly calm, that boundary completely blurs the second-day experience emotional arousal. And this is huge. During the day, playing at a sunny park, your preschooler knows that the monster in their favorite cartoon is just pretend. They can articulate that perfectly to you. But you put them alone in the dark and introduce just a little bit of emotional arousal or fear, that logical boundary completely dissolves. This nighttime behavior is absolutely not defiance. They aren't just trying to give you a hard time or stubbornly ignoring your logic. Their developing brains simply cannot maintain the wall between fantasy and reality when they are scared.
In fact, researchers Harris and Brown found something absolutely incredible back in 1991. They found that children can hold the belief that a creature is pretend, yet still be terrified of it. Their imagination literally overrides their logical judgment when they're aroused. So even if they logically know, somewhere deep in their brain, that a creature is pretend, their imagination just swoops in and completely hijacks their nervous system. Being alone, being in the dark, and feeling that sudden spike of emotion totally short-circuits a child's logical judgment. This is exactly why your 2 a.m. lecture on why ghosts aren't real is falling on deaf ears. Their logical judgment has been actively overridden.
And look, this isn't just some one-off fringe theory. We're talking about a massive body of developmental psychology here. From Woolley and Wellman to verified studies by Sharon and Woolley in the early 2000s, the science confirms this phenomenon, that imagination override is just a universal expected feature of early childhood cognitive development. Moving on to Section 2, the dark room effect. What happens when there's an absence of information? The dark removes information. I want you to really think about that for a second. Our brains are essentially meaning-making machines, right? They are constantly scanning our environment, picking up little visual cues just to assure us that we're safe. But the dark removes all of that visual data. It acts like this massive, terrifying blank canvas. And when a child with an immature fantasy-reality distinction is sitting in a pitch-black room, their emotionally aroused brain absolutely hates that ambiguity. So what does it do? It fills that blank canvas with threats. Suddenly, that innocent pile of laundry in the corner becomes a goblin. The shadow from the tree branch outside becomes a sharp claw. The brain is literally filling in the missing visual information with the scariest things its imagination can possibly conjure up.
All right, Section 3, Strategies for Empowerment. Let's talk about building child agency.
The absolute magic word here is agency. Researchers Safon and Lagatuda discovered that children actually cope way better when they are given agency over the imagined threat, rather than just getting pure reassurance. Now, as parents, our immediate instinct is to just hug them tightly and say, hey, don't worry, there's nothing there, I promise. But we now know that pure reassurance is actually less effective than introducing mastery strategies. You have to give the child a sense of control. If their imagination is powerful enough to conjure up the threat in the first place, we have to empower them to use that exact same imagination and agency to defeat the threat.
So how do we actually hand them that agency? Well, here are a few practical, highly effective tools for nighttime mastery. First up, try a monster spray. This is just a simple, everyday spray bottle filled with water that they can keep right by their bed. Second, provide a flashlight that the child controls. Remember the dark room effect we just talked about? The flashlight gives them the physical agency to instantly bring back visual information the second they feel scared. Third, maintain a consistent, checked-in safe bedtime routine. This establishes predictability and calm before the lights even go out. And finally, absolutely limit scary media before bed.
You definitely do not want to give that highly active imagination any fresh, terrifying source material right before they plunge into the dark. By handing over these simple tools, you're rapidly empowering them and helping them reestablish their very own sense of safety.
Which brings us to Section 4, the playing along trap. How we might accidentally be making fears worse.
There is a massive, and I mean massive, psychological difference between validating a feeling and accidentally confirming a threat. A lot of well-meaning caregivers think they're helping by quote-unquote playing along, checking the closet to make sure the monster is gone, or playfully pretending to chase a ghost out the window. Please, do not do this. Think about it from their perspective. When you, the ultimate trusted adult, actually go and check the closet for a monster, you are accidentally confirming to your child that a real monster could actually be in there. You are validating the physical threat rather than validating their emotion.
So instead of playing along, try using this structured approach. Step 1. Acknowledge the scared feeling. You can say something like, I can see you're feeling really scared right now, and it is totally okay to feel scared. See? You validate the emotion, but you don't validate the monster. Step 2. Give the child a practical tool. Physically hand them their flashlight. Remind them of their agency. And step 3. Provide calm certainty of safety. You need to be the anchor to reality here. Say, you are safe in this room. I am right down the hall. This completely replaces the trap of playing along with a steady, empowering framework that actually builds up their resilience over time. Now, before we wrap up, it is really important to draw an essential safety line here. Persistent, impairing nighttime fear that stretches beyond a typical developmental window absolutely warrants professional input. While everything we've talked about today is a completely normal, expected part of cognitive development, if these fears become severe, prolonged, and deeply impair your child's ability to function or sleep over a long period, it's time to step back. We should never, ever try to diagnose as caregivers. That is the moment to gently but firmly seek out professional, pediatric input to ensure your child gets the tailored support they might need.
Well, we have covered a ton of ground in this explainer today, from the blurring of fantasy and reality to the dark room effect and the absolute importance of giving kids agency rather than just empty reassurance. So the question is, how will you change your bedtime approach tonight? The next time the 2 a.m. monster strikes, are you going to rely on adult logic? Are you going to accidentally play along and check the closet? Or are you going to validate their fear, hand them a flashlight, and empower them to take control? The science gives us the tools, but it's entirely up to us to actually use them. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, good luck tonight!